Well, I think the first time I went into the Y, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My mother actually took me into the Evanston Y and wanted to see if there were swim lessons for a 4 or 5 year old. And this was probably 1958, somewhere in there. And the reason was that previous summer we had been up in Canada at a cottage, and 3 times during that summer I got a little too close to the water and fell in. 3 different episodes, and could not swim. So she decided this was time for me to learn how to swim. So the next time I fell in the water, we would be able to rescue me. So the Evanston Y indicated that they did not have swim lessons for 4 or 5 year olds, or actually anybody under 8. And from what I understand now is the reason was that you had to be 8 years old, was that you had to be able to touch bottom of the pool in the shallow end. And so they did indicate, though, we could try over at the Emerson Street YMCA, which at the time was the black Y. So you had the Grove Street Y, which was the white Y, and the Emerson Street Y, which was the black Y. And they were taking young kids to learn how to swim at young ages. So actually that's where I learned how to swim, was over at the Emerson Street YMCA. I do recall then many years later, probably when I was 8 years old, there was a program that was called the Summer Adventure Club. And I do remember a couple of trips. You'd get this big list of all the trips you'd go on. For the summer, you'd sign up for those trips. I remember some of the favorites were Riverview. I even went to the Don McNeil Breakfast Club. So you got to go, I think that was at the WGN studios, and actually sit in on a radio or television presentation, which was a lot of fun. And you'd go to the J Potato Chip Factory, and a lot of these were the same trips every summer, but it was always a lot of fun. Probably when I was 9 or 10, getting into 1962, had my first trip away from home to Camp Echo. And this was an exciting experience for me to go off to camp for 2 weeks with my friends. And this is where I learned how to water ski. I learned how to canoe. A lot of fun times up at Camp Echo in the cabins. And I still remember a lot of the club or the counselors, the camp counselors up there at that time. So fond memories of camp. During my junior high years, we had a Y Club. And the Y Clubs were a program where you'd have a group of 15 boys or so that would get together, and you would have weekly meetings. You'd have a president and a vice president, a treasurer. So it was actually some leadership positions within the club that you learned. And we did sports activities, basketball, football. We had track meets. There was a big carnival every year. So it wasn't just sports, there was other activities too. Even a drama night. So a lot of fun times there. Into high school, was involved in the Brilliantine program. And this is the high school musical that for juniors and seniors. And my senior year, actually, I met my wife. My wife and I had the leads in Wildcat, and there was a kiss scene, so I guess that's what did it. So we eventually got married in 1979, had our kids, and our life has moved on and been great. So the Y is responsible for my wife. After I graduated from college, during this time up at Camp Echo, I came back to Camp Echo during those high school years and was on the kitchen crew, was an assistant counselor, was a counselor for a couple of years. So this was a 4-year period. My senior year of college, this would have been 1975. Roger Marshall, then camp director, asked that I become the program director, and I took that position. So I really at that point had a full life of YMCA already. And in 1977, Bill Geiger, who was then the boys director, asked if I wanted to join him in the boys department and become the associate boys director. and run the club program, the same program that I had been in over the previous years, and be involved in outing programs such as the Canadian canoe trip, Utah ski trips, and I decided this sounds like kind of a fun job, so decided to do that. So Bill and I worked together for a few years, and we're actually roommates in Evanston during that time to try and split the cost of living amongst a couple of bachelors. So we had a fun time. Those were nice years, and that I was the youth director then, the boys director after Bill left, so I was full-time YMCA director from 1977 to 1982. And when Bill left, the executive director at the time, Bob Sharp, was interested in consolidating the boys department and the girls department, and had asked if I would take on that responsibility. So we did that, and we joined the two departments together to a youth department. Well, certainly consolidating a boys and girls department and a youth department, the good parts of that were certainly you were not duplicating services of staff. So certainly you were able to stretch your dollars further and actually stretch your programs further. It's because those people, if you had just one youth director that was overseeing all the youth programs, you could then hire specifically, and we did, associate youth directors, specific responsibilities to female program and male programs for a boys youth director, in essence. So in that respect, you really could consolidate your programming and actually expand your programming with the same dollars being spent. The unique problems sometimes we had were there were certain times where really you absolutely had to have a female working with young girls or a male working with young boys. Locker room responsibilities, for example. At times those were a challenge, but we worked through those. I had one central check-in area before you get to the locker rooms, just logistics like that. And we always had high school help, part-time folks that would be responsible for overseeing locker room activity, whatever. And it was a great thing to do. Many of the Ys were doing it with over the country, through the country. So I think this was, at the time had come to do this consolidation. I think the Y has been really the central focal point, gathering place of the Evanston community for so many years. For me, growing up in the Y, it seemed like there was always activities to do at the Y. All of my friends would go down there. These days, you have more competition with recreation programs, soccer leagues, everything else. But still, I think those programs don't serve the need of what the Y can do, and that's basically character building, leadership training. So I think that's really where the Y has been, and I see the Y going into the future is continuing with the same type of leadership training and character building that they've done such a good job at over the years. Over the past 20 years, it had been a while. When I moved out to Glenview with my family and raising my family, I'd kind of been separated a little bit away from the Y, and I would come back periodically. I do remember a time when I visited, and Mike Duvall was one of the directors there, and actually I had him when he was a young youth, high school actually, when I was a full-time director there. So it was nice to maintain that contact. But what they were doing at the time was reinvesting in the facility, certainly. I see that continuing now, and I see them continuing to do that in the future. My hope for the Y is that they will continue to reinvent themselves, to not be stale in their programming, to be flexible in serving the needs of the community, no matter what those needs are. Certainly the Y has provided a need not only for youth programming, but for adults. The adult residence program that they have, some folks have lived there for 20, 25 years at the Y, and this is their home and their family. So they will always serve a need, and I hope the Y will always be there to help serve our community need.